Okay, welcome back. This is the second part covering converting OutRun's music to the Amiga computer. So last time round I spoke through the process that I was using in terms of writing tooling to convert the original Sega music macro language files over to mod format. This time round I thought I'd go in a slightly different direction and talk through the evolution, I guess, of some of OutRun's music over the years and how it's been mastered and how it's been released. So first up, if you just want to hear the mod file itself, I'll leave a timestamp in the comments so you can jump there and check it out. But I thought we'd first go way back in time to the late 80s, to probably the first time that a lot of people got to listen to OutRun's soundtrack at home. And that was when it came on a cassette tape as part of the US Gold release, which was released for the Spectrum, the Commodore 64, the Amstrad CPC, and more. Now, I grabbed a recording of this off the internet and I'm going to play it to you, and then I'm going to play a number of other releases of the OutRun soundtrack so you can hear the difference between them, and they're all very different. So this one's obviously going to sound the worst because it's sourced off an old cassette tape. I didn't source this myself, I just grabbed it. The interesting thing about this is it's clearly recorded from the arcade hardware. However, it's a different arrangement to the actual arcade machine. They've either edited it or they've done something with it, because number one, it's got wave noises over the music, which it didn't have in the arcade machine, and after that, like, the music just loops and loops and loops. So I'll play you a quick snippet from the cassette tape. So that's what we had to put up with back in the late 80s, but that was probably the only way you ever got to hear the OutRun music at home, and probably that audio there is a little bit degraded because it's from an old cassette, but it sounded pretty terrible. You can find that file online if you look for it and check it out. So what we're going to do is go through the evolution of Passing Breeze in particular, because that's the track that I've just finished, and then we'll finally play the mod file and see how it compares. Okay, so the next release that came out in Japan was on GMO Records, and this was on cassette, it was on CD, it was on vinyl as well. The great thing about this release is it came with a booklet which contained all the notation for the music, which was a really, really beautiful touch. And I just translated some of the liner notes from Japanese into English, and there's a lot of really interesting information about the music there. First of all, Passing Breeze was originally going to be called Passing Wind, until someone at Sega pointed out that this didn't have necessarily a positive meaning in the English language, so it was changed to Passing Breeze. The other thing is, Hiro himself mentions on the notes that he was a bit disappointed because he didn't really get to finish Passing Breeze properly. He wanted to add more to it, which shocked me quite a lot because it's actually one of my favourite tunes from OutRun, even though it's not one of the most complicated ones. The other thing he mentioned was that there were 3 other tracks written for OutRun that never got released, or he said they would possibly be reused in another game, but no further details are mentioned of that. So, and I've never seen that mentioned again. So this is the original release from the 80s that was in Japan. The interesting thing about this is it sounds terrible, and this is a direct CD rip of the music. So see what you think. There's tons and tons of reverb. I don't think this is sourced from the arcade machine. I think it might be sourced from either like a reel-to-reel cassette or directly from the sequencers. If Google translates to be believed, it could be directly from the sequencers, but it's interesting to listen to all the same. It's not very high quality despite being from CD. Can you hear all that reverb? It doesn't sound like that when you play it on doesn't sound like that at all when you play the arcade machine or if you play it on an emulator. So that's obviously added in post-production. I don't know why it was done like that. I know Sega were mastering a lot of their audio to reel cassette at the time, possibly some tape saturation or also involved, who knows. Anyway, after that came a second release, which was a Pony Canyon release. They did an awful lot of Sega music back in the day. Again, this is a different recording. If you compare the WAV files here, these two, which are highlighted in blue, although they look similar, there's a lot of differences to the audio. However, both of these releases have a lot of echo to them, a lot of reverb. So it's not the same master recording as the previous one, but it's different again. In my opinion, this is probably one of the worst of the bunch. I'll just play a few bits. Now, I'm not sure if you realise this, but as I pointed out on my blog many years ago, the OutRun arcade board actually shipped with a corrupt sample ROM. So a lot of the drum noises, a bit was stuck on that ROM, which meant they sounded really bad and distorted. They're effectively corrupted. Now, I think that version that I just played has the corrupted samples used. So it's possibly sourced from arcade hardware. Later on, that's fixed. You can detect it most on the cymbal crash because that's the most sustained piece of percussion in OutRun's music. So anyway, those two are quite close. However, let's take a comparison. I'm going to go back to the Sega Game Music version, and then we're going to go to the 20th Anniversary CD edition, which was released for OutRun's 20th anniversary. Now, the 20th Anniversary edition is the best of the bunch. It sounds fantastic. It sounds better than the arcade machine. It's even if you jack up an audio out to the arcade board, this sounds far superior. I think they went back to the original source recordings, possibly the original instruments, and remastered everything in a digital audio workstation because it sounds light years ahead. Let me just give you a bit of a comparison. I'm going to switch between the two. So this is the old 80s CD. Hear that difference? It is so good, this recording. It's especially noticeable, if you listen to some of the later bits of the track. Now we'll go back to the one of the other older versions. Yeah, you can hear there the drums are completely lost and muddy in the mix in the old version. In the new, they're at the forefront. They've also, I think, slightly cleaned up some of the drum samples because if you actually play the music off the original hardware, some of the samples have the odd click after them and things like that, where maybe the end point's not set correctly, but you don't really notice that on arcade hardware because you're in a noisy arcade and no one was listening to it as if they were in an audio studio. So the 20th Anniversary edition is absolutely spectacular. It's about 11 CDs, every conversion ever. There's loads of really interesting facts in there if you use Google Translate to translate the inside notes. For example, I found out today that Turbo OutRun was written in approximately 3 months. That's the time it took for the whole game, which when you think GTA now takes over 10 years to make, that is insane. Okay, so that is probably the best of the bunch. You can look at the waveforms here and see they've done some really good mastering on this. Then if you go to the MAME version of this is like the VGM output from MAME, so it doesn't sound as good as the 20th Anniversary CD because it's not really mastered. You can even see some weird offsets going on in some of the waveforms here as well. However, this is this close to the arcade machine, and the data discs release that came out on vinyl probably a few years ago now, sounds quite close to this. I'm a big vinyl nerd, so I really like vinyl. I've got thousands of records, but I don't think the data disc release is really all that great. It's not mastered particularly well. It all sounds a bit thin to me. I'm not going to play it now because it is quite similar to this, but I was a bit disappointed. I think probably a lot of the audience for the data disc releases are people who buy the record and maybe just put it on their wall or on the shelf because the packaging's great and everything like that, but really in terms of vinyl mastering it's not the best. So let's just listen to a section, I guess, from the MAME output, and I'll then compare that back with the best version, which I think is the 20th anniversary CD. Let's just go back now. So much cleaner, that 20th anniversary CD. I don't know if you can hear that through YouTube, but it's very, very obviously different. Now, the interesting thing is here at the bottom, I've got the output from the Amiga mod file. Now, I just want to note that this actually came out Fast Tracker 2, not Protracker, so it is going to sound a little bit different to the clip at the end of the video. But the interesting thing is here, because of the tooling that I've written, you can see that the waveform is very, very similar to MAME. So the track's obviously very, very close. However, you know, it's a 4-channel mod file. It uses lo-fi 8-bit samples. I've had to make a lot of compromises to get the file size down, and it's still not as small as I'd like it to be. It's currently at the probably about 790k mark. The reason for that is Passing Breeze, although it's a very simple piece of music compared with Magical Sound Shower, uses an awful lot of long chords, and you've got a couple of ways of trying to solve this. Either you can loop the FM noise as a sample, or you can go for a longer sample, or you can do both. Now, the thing about the reduction of this track to 4 channels is the thing that you're combining lots of FM noises together, so there isn't a clean point in the sample where you can loop without noticing it. So I had to use slightly longer samples than I wanted. So in the end, the final size of Magical Sound Shower was 590k, and this is the high end of 700. I might try and optimize it a bit further, but I figured it was good enough to do a video and play it to everyone. To answer another question as well about the music, these mod files will be released. They'll be released alongside the Amiga port that I am doing of OutRun. That will be out hopefully later in the summer if things go well. So these mods will be available to everyone. They'll be free to use. If you're doing your own OutRun project or whatever, you can take them and make use of them. It'd be great to see them used by other people. So really, I'm just going to play you a few snippets from this track, and then I'll flip between this version and the MAME version, so you can just hear a quick difference, perhaps. So when you go back to the MAME one, you'll notice it is better quality. There isn't a lot in it. Like, overall it's turned out pretty well, and if you compare this if you go back and compare this with the original CD that was released, I think the Amiga mod file actually sounds a lot better than that. So overall, I'm pleased. I think it can still be tweaked, but let me know what you think. Please drop a comment below.